Some of the older companies like Shin were a bit more of a culture shock to me. They are very, very Japanese. Everything is very hierarchical. No one steps out of line. The working hours are very, very long. But for most people that I know in the anime industry, it's self-inflicted. The animators are very passionate about their work and competitive. If the government decided we're going to make sure that animators don't work past 5 p.m., all of them will do it in secret at home.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Bellamy Brooks. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Of course, thank you for having me.
You're an animator working in the anime industry here in Japan, doing some of your own original work, and most recently have been working on a huge project which is blowing up on the internet, which is the Digital Circus.
Yes.
I'm sure this will come up later today. Among many other conversation parts the anime industry in Japan. But let's start at the beginning. Like with all our guests, I'm curious about what brought you here to Japan. Where does your journey begin?
Yeah, so you want the long one or the short one?
We've got time.
All right. So there's a lot of context that needs to be built up to why I'm in Japan. But I'll start with just sort of like my youth and the things I was interested in that kind of like sparked my curiosity about this type of thing. So when I was very young, I of course was really in the early 2000s, in the 90s, there was really great movies and film that were coming out from all over the world, Japan, Europe, America, everywhere. So I started to get really into film and TV animation in general. So I grew up, of course, watching Western cartoons like SpongeBob and these types of things. But eventually, I started to discover animation and media that had a little bit more of a stronger storytelling base, which kind of piqued my interest. So I became really interested in live action fantasy shows like Lord of the Rings. And the thing that made that so interesting to me was this vast collection of behind the scenes content that they had for on the DVDs.
Interesting.
So they had people making these beautiful sets and all these character designs and creatures and prop making, and like I thought that all of that seemed very fascinating and interesting. And then, of course, as well, I started to see things like Disney animations and these movies in the early 2000s or 90s, such as like Hercules or The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And these types of shows, The Lion King, of course, the fact that they were hand-drawn and done on a light table, it was very fascinating to me. So I started to look into these things, trying to understand how they were made. So after that, I started getting really into drawing. And when I started drawing fan arts of characters from like Invader Zim, that type of thing, I started to discover anime and the animation made in Japan. So that was through late night TV. It was the only way to watch it. I didn't really have good internet connections, so I could only watch whatever they had released in America. So of course, that was like mainstream stuff like Bleach, Inuyasha, and also the French-American or the French-Japanese shows too. So things like Totally Spies, Code Lyoko, those types of productions. And then, of course, a little bit later, shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra, these types of shows that I became very interested in. While I was doing this drawing in my free time as a kid, and then sort of getting more interested in storytelling, I found that I might be interested in other art forms too. So I started looking into sculpture and dance and theater. And so I kind of just experimented with how can I find a medium where I can tell stories and express myself in a way that feels right to me. So in college or in high school and college, I was doing acting. I participated in Shakespeare plays and uh, even filmed a documentary about how theater production is made. So I've always had this kind of interest in storytelling in general. Now, how I landed in animation in Japan, it feels almost like those marble machines where you drop them in and they bounce off the little pins and you just land somewhere. It feels more like a series of circumstances that has made me end up here. It feels more like animation chose me than the other way around. I didn't have like a really strong desire or dream. I want to be this when I was younger. I had fleeting dreams. And over time, those evolved as I got reality checks about certain industries. So there was a point where I realized acting wasn't right for me when I took a acting for film class and I saw myself on camera and I thought that I was doing horribly and I was so awkward. So um, I think that I learned that I was better suited for behind the camera. So then I started looking into how do I create projects while being behind the camera. And I started to pursue documentary filmmaking, where I worked at the university's TV station, producing different variety shows, and started getting into graphic design and motion graphics at the same time because of they had a kind of a lack of artistry at the studio. I guess they were using graphics that were made in the 80s, like nobody updated it. There's these lower thirds that looked really cheap, no opening animation. So I thought, oh, maybe I could give that a try. And so I created some quick news style graphics for the studio. And one of the professors was very like excited by this, and she told me, please redo the entire package for the whole station and we'll give you a college credit for it.
Cool.
So I was able to do that as an extra college credit, just kind of creating these little animations. After that, I joined documentary film classes. I was also doing a little bit of acting still on the side as a minor degree, and the the designs that I did, they were very happy with it. And then I moved on to other things. I got an opportunity to work at a media production company, and they were hiring editors. I was thinking that, oh, if I'm going to be a filmmaker, of course I should get more experience as an editor. So I apply to this company, hoping I can get an editing job, and I included these animations I created in my portfolio, and maybe some drawings and stuff I did too of some fan art of some stuff. Just maybe they would think that would be useful, the skills to draw. And they said, we don't want to hire you as an editor. We want to hire you as an animator. And I hadn't even considered the possibility of being an animator. But they insisted that the stuff that I could do with motion graphics was much more valuable or interesting to them at the time, because there was a lot of people from my college that could do editing. And nobody is training animation. So finding an animator in Arkansas, which is the state I'm from in the US, it's the middle of nowhere near Texas. Nobody knows where it is, but it's foresty and humid.
Like here.
But once I got into that job, I was given a lot of resources because it was under a university. So this production company was creating media for the company, for other corporations that needed workforce development content, type of things like this is how a supply chain is animated. And like you have like a semi truck roll in and go into a building out the other side or something. And so there was a lot of motion graphics like that. But as time went on, and I ended up working there for about 7 years, we started getting more into storytelling style animations. So we started having courses that were more social in nature. So you couldn't do motions, simple motion graphics. You needed a more complex character animation or storytelling. So then I started getting into storyboarding and animation and creating character designs that could be used for animation. While I was there, my brother, Jarrett Martin, he was simultaneously pursuing animation, but from a completely different perspective. I was just doing it as a job I landed in, and I didn't think too much about it. and he was working really hard to learn the craft of Japanese animation. So I ended up teaching him whatever I knew about the fundamentals of animation from my side, because the Western and Japanese fundamentals are basically the same. So you can kind of platform off of that same knowledge. And so he was pursuing this animation while I was working at this job. And around the time COVID happened, my studio went fully remote and everybody was working from home. And the studio itself was government funded, so they were just going to, everybody just keeps their jobs. You just go home and you do whatever work you can. A lot of the content that we ended up doing shifted away from original creations into more support for just the tech of the online learning system, which is not so interesting to me. I'm more interested in storytelling and creating characters and things like this. So um, Jarrett had asked me multiple times before, around 2020 to 2022. I'm creating independent animations for online content creators and even getting some jobs from Japan. Are you interested in working with us for really low amount of money or for free? And I turned him down 3 times, I think, over the few years, because I had a really comfortable salary and benefits and retirement at my current job. So if I were to give up a comfortable job for a really, really high risk, it would need to make sure that there'd be something that I found really valuable about it. As time went on, he started to create more independent productions and got funding for an independent production where he needed a character designer. And he said, "I will hire you as a character designer. If you're able to do it full time, let me know." And this was before the studio became famous, before there was really much of anything. My very first project with the company is called Tonari Animation, was a project for a VTuber. Her name is Gargora. She's just this little shark girl, and she wanted an anime. So he was developing this pipeline, building a network of animators, all foreign, that were learning Japanese animation. So I joined that and then did a few cuts on that and found that work to be much more satisfying than the work I was doing in the West. So on February 22nd, 2022, I remember this because it's 22222, I quit my job and just decided to go this direction of freelancing for animation in Japan from the United States for very little money. So it was a huge risk, and I don't think very many people find that they can be in a position where they could do something that brash. And there's a few more brash decisions that I made along the way that landed me fully in Japan. So after working remotely and doing freelance illustration on the side, sorry, this is the long one. That's what I said.
No, I'm making mental notes of everything you say.
So after freelancing in Japan and getting my first anime credits, which I got to work on Boruto, which is a very famous spin-off series of Naruto. I got to do 3 episodes doing really simple cuts, barely working on them. But I got my first anime credits, which was my first credits of anything I've ever done in animation, because the work I did up to this point was uncredited, just educational content. So I found that my name getting to go on IMDb was very exciting, and I really loved the idea of being able to collect more credits and continue pursuing animation in Japan. Sorry, do you have a question?
Yes, I have many
Sure.
actually,
Okay.
but I thought it was fascinating because you kind of described you arriving in Japan as the same as like the marble ball falling and bouncing off. And listening to your story, it really seems like throughout your childhood you got interested into many, 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 many fields, from cinema and behind the scenes and documentary and more and more and more. And in the end, you ended up falling into the anime kind of exit from the game. And but one of the things you said was you were interested into ways to tell story and the storytelling aspect of this. And you described working on that first kind of anime project for this YouTuber as more gratifying? What was it that was more gratifying
Uh,
for you to work on this kind of project than the ones you did before?
yeah. So the thing that was gratifying about working on that animation Gargoyle Shark was just this ability to be a part of a team that is working together to create a story that will be entertaining for people to see and that will make people happy and laugh and cry and look and dive deeply to find all the Easter eggs. There's just so much thought that's put into even small independent creations like that that are so much more satisfying than teaching business students how to manage their businesses. So there's like I think it's more that throughout my life, I was always built to be an entertainer of some kind. As a kid, I was goofing off, reenacting movies and TV shows for my family, creating skits or home movies with stuffed animals. I wish I could find those, but I think they're gone forever. But yeah, so there's always been this kind of creator aspect to my life. And when I get to share that with uh, the general population or fans of whatever the IP is, it's so much more satisfying to see people's reactions and just get that kind of feedback from the other side. The career I had before that, I didn't ever hear back from the people who saw the content. So are they enjoying it? They had to pay for it because they're going to school. So it was very difficult to feel like my work was going anywhere. We got a few awards for some commercials we made, which were quite nice, but um, yeah, being in the entertainment industry just feels more rewarding.
So on February 2022, that was it. You
Hmm.
made a decision to change careers,
Hmm.
but originally still working in the United States for projects that were also based in Japan. What was the last, like the moment that made you like, okay, I'm going to Japan?
Yeah, so that was a very interesting decision I made. So about a year after working remotely for Japan, I started to realize that freelance jobs and indie projects were a bit more profitable. I think it seemed a bit difficult to try to maintain a career in anime. So I started to think of it more as a hobby or something that I could do in my free time to skill up. But my brother, when he decided that year, 2023, I think late 2022, he decided to move to Japan, just completely out of the blue. He said, I'm going to move to Japan, open a studio there, and just see what happens. And he initially visited a few times throughout 2022. And he would tell me how great it is here, how much he loves Japan. And there was one night, maybe December of 2022, or maybe early 2023. He came over to my apartment after getting back from Japan, and he said, "No matter like what you do with the rest of your career, you need to just go to Japan and be there for a few months and see what it's like, and it will change your life." And we were drinking a lot, and basically we had a very, very long conversation. I came up with many excuses. I have credit card debts. I have a car loan. I don't even have my passport. I just had all these excuses. Um, and he said, why don't you just buy a one-way ticket and just figure it out? And so that night, or maybe the next morning, I went online and bought $1,000 one-way ticket to Tokyo. And I didn't have anything I needed to make that work. But I think a lot of times when you make a financial commitment, everything else will just fall into place, and you must do it to make that worth it. So I rapidly created my passport, and I saved up enough money so that I could stay in Japan for 2 months, just on a tourist visa. We don't have working holiday as Americans or as people from the US. I think other American countries do, but um, anyways, so the basically after I bought that ticket, I did whatever I could to be here. And while I was here, I helped him set up the physical studio. It was just a really tiny, rundown space in West Tokyo that wasn't supposed to be an office. There's a raised floor in the middle that was really awkward because it was above the garage for cars to go into. So it was a really clunky, awkward space. And over that year, we ended up building it into a really robust studio. However, after my 2 months were over, I had to go back to the US.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was here in those first 2 months, I didn't even consider the idea of moving here. It wasn't even a thought until I ended up meeting some pretty important people in the industry. And I can't say who they were because the project I was attached to, I can't talk about. But um, I was the first contact for a major contract, which landed us a dream job. So when I was walking down the street afterwards, after we landed this dream job, and I asked my brother if I moved to Japan, are these opportunities more likely for me? And he said, of course. And so I decided that day to move to Japan. And after a week or two, I only had a few weeks left. In my first stay, I moved back to I went back to the U.S., told everyone I was moving to Japan, and bought a ticket for 2 months later to move to Japan. So I sold everything. I sold my car, sold all my furniture. I had a vast collection of antique furniture that I'd collected over many years. I wish I could have kept them, but many anime figures and games and TVs, like lots of big stuff. And in that time, I didn't leave my apartment for 2 months because I wasn't going to spend a single penny. I had friends support my food income and be able to really help funnel me into this position where I could move to Japan. So I got rid of $10,000 of credit card debt and saved $10,000 in 2 months just by selling stuff and working freelance nonstop without leaving my apartment. And after that, I only had 3 suitcases of stuff left. And I took that with me to Anime Expo because Anime Expo I was a guest at the same time as my move. Ended up going to LA, doing a big talk in front of 3,000 people, which was, I think, kind of accidental. I don't think they meant for us to be in that room.
But there you were.
Everyone came to this main hall room because they thought there was a Chainsaw Man announcement. And they're like, welcoming Tonari Animation. And everyone's like, wait, what? Where's Chainsaw Man? So it was really awkward. But people seemed to enjoy the panel. We talked about anime production and a bit of the history of the company. And yeah, so then ended up going to the beach with some friends there. We saw some fireworks shows. It was around the 4th of July and Independence Day in the US. And I moved to Japan after that. I didn't have an apartment yet. So
you talked about financial commitments and things will fall into places. You made some big commitments to kind of uproot your life.
That's true. I did uproot. That is a decision that didn't get put onto me. But I felt like the career in anime chose me, and I just must do this.
What was it like for you growing up in Arkansas as someone who wasn't particularly interested in Japan to begin with, to suddenly make that commitment and kind of move from what you described as a state full of forest and humidity to an urban jungle full of humidity?
Yeah, so Arkansas is the only place I had ever lived. But luckily I had chances to travel. I studied abroad in Europe. So I went to Germany, Austria, Hungary, Czech Republic, and Slovakia on this study abroad trip for my university. And that was my actual first time even flying on a plane. It was when I was about 17. And I got so fascinated with other cultures at that point because no one from my hometown even had a passport. So unless they worked for an international corporation. So the fact that I went to another country, it just opened my mind to the possibility that there were other ways to live life. And since then, the time between, I didn't travel outside of the US, but I did get to travel to different cities. But I really only got to start traveling once I joined animation. Mm-hmm. And when I joined Japanese anime, because there's conventions all over the US that want to hear from animators and creators of anime, but they have no connection to Japan. They have English voice actors, they have fan art markets, but very rarely do they get full industry people. So they were very excited by this. Oh, we have Americans making anime, so let's get them. So we ended up traveling a lot to Chicago, Seattle, Texas, California, like all these big states, and getting to talk about animation. So at that point, I started to get very used to cities. Before that, I'd never been on a subway, um, barely been on buses. So it was a bit of it wasn't as much of a shock coming to Tokyo, but it is very, very different to being surrounded by trees and small town folk to being in a city that you have to stuff on a train to commute. So yeah, that it is quite an adjustment, I think.
And then you arrive, you have no apartment, you have to figure all of this out, but also you have no more career back home, you have to make it here.
Yes.
So I believe you join your brother on
Yes.
this journey of tonari animation.
Yes.
You mentioned this contact that you can't mention the name of, he who shall not be named. We shall call him like that. How did you then get started with your new life here?
Yeah, so when I first got here, I was already speaking with some real estate companies online from Arkansas, trying to like get an idea of maybe they could find something within my price range. But I had the fact that I didn't have a visa yet, so it was very difficult to find an apartment in the beginning. So I stayed in Jarrett's loft in his tiny shoebox apartment. There was no aircon up there, so it was the middle of summer. I suffered
Must have been
with
very comfortable.
no bedding on the ground for a month while working in animation as my start. I got very lucky to get a really nice apartment through the company that I went through, e-housing. It's a very foreign friendly housing agency, but the downside is that you need money to be able to go through them because they do guarantor fees and they have their own real estate fees, but they can find you a place that will take you basically no matter what. But I had built up this big savings, and that really helped me just to get my foot in the door. If I did, and most of it went to my apartment. So it took me a really long time to build up furniture and that sort of thing. But so while I'm finding an apartment and trying to get my work visa situated, which I hired a lawyer to do, it was just uh, throw my savings at it and hopefully it works out. And it did. So the lawyer was able to get the visa that I needed for 1 year, and then I was able to get an apartment, and things started to fall into place. I remember getting my bed for the first time and being so happy that I finally have somewhere to sleep. And yeah, since then, I've been able to work on over 20 or so different anime productions, worked physically at multiple Japanese studios. So I've got a lot of experience seeing what it's like within the Japanese studios, not just this foreign created studio, especially in this last year. So things have escalated a lot. I got to study character design under Thomas Romain, a famous character designer known for Oban Star Racers and Code Lyoko. And just got to meet so many incredible people, getting to meet veteran animators and learn from them. It's been just kind of like an amazing experience, and I don't regret any of it.
So let's talk about anime, because you left everything behind for that career here in Japan. What makes Japanese anime so special? Special enough for you to kind of dedicate your life to making it?
So, yeah, that's a good question. In my mind, the thing that makes Japanese anime special, and maybe it's the case in other Asian countries too now, but at least it wasn't for the longest time, that Japan is one of the few countries where 2D animation is fully produced inside the same country. So they create the characters, they create the original content. So they create everything from manga all the way through the final anime is made in Japan. They do outsource, of course, for support animation, but the core creators are here and they're working in the same place as the animators. In America, this is not common. I don't know if there's any studios that do that. There might be a few. Now there's a few, like Titmouse maybe has a few animators in house, and so does Powerhouse. But there's a lot of most of the studios there, even for very Western animation, is made in Asia. So, for example, The Simpsons is made in Korea. So,
What?
yeah,
Wow.
all 2D animation, especially if it's hand drawn, is made in Asia. So, if I if anyone wants to pursue a career in 2D animation, this is where to be. There's 500 anime studios just in Tokyo, all doing 2D anime. So it's the place to be. It's the Hollywood of anime. So if you're going to work in anime, that's kind of the place to be. Of course, there's studios in Kyoto and other places across Japan and across Asia, but this is a lot of the manga adaptations are made here. So it just feels like you're a part of the the full creation here. Um, Whereas in the West, it might be they create some pre-production storytelling and then ship it off to get animation back. They might correct it or make notes, but no one feels like they have full ownership over it. So I think here, the teams that make the productions, they feel more ownership over the material, at least at the main studios that have the prime contracts.
You kind of got propelled here. You didn't speak Japanese, I imagine, at the time. Do you remember the first time you went to one of those big animation studios for the first time and you kind of showed up there and you're like, oh, this is where it's all made. All the people making this are in this building.
Yeah, so I've had a chance to visit many famous studios. I visited Trigger, Shine, Studio Biberty, Sunrise, of course, Studio Mother, which I'm doing a lot of work for now. And every studio has their own sort of flavor, I guess, of how they do things. Some of the older companies like Shine were a bit more of a culture shock to me, because they are very, very Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
And you might know what I mean by that, but basically it's very work focused, very quiet, very strict. Everything is very hierarchical, and no one steps out of line. It feels um, very serious. And then there's other studios like Studio Trigger or Studio Biberty that have a bit more of a relaxed atmosphere. I think Trigger by far has the most relaxed atmosphere of every studio I visited. Just tons of figurines and Gundams everywhere, and everyone's dressed casually. There's people with interesting fashion, and so it's every studio seems to be a bit different. Um, the There wasn't too much. I guess to go back to your question, I remember uh, the very first time I was at another studio, it was Studio Biberty. We were working on them with Magical Destroyers and Prima Doll and a few other shows. And we got to go have my very first in-person Sakuchi. So the meeting for or maybe it was a layout meeting. I'm not sure, but it was my very first meeting with them. I think it was a Sakuchi, and we just got in. We got to have some tea. We sat down with the director, and they went over the episode section that we were covering and told us all about the characters and what they're doing. It was quite smooth. We had an interpreter with us because most of us didn't speak Japanese at the time, and so the yeah, it was just very interesting to kind of see how this system works. And I think one of the most interesting things for me was that the directors go to every meeting. That includes new animators that are on the project. So it doesn't matter how famous the director is, they're going to meet with every animator to tell them about their section.
Cool.
So we've had really great opportunities to meet some incredible directors. And that makes me feel very lucky because there's directors that I've seen do incredible works in the past that I was a fan of, and I get to meet them, but in a official, formal setting, working together. So yeah, that's kind of interesting.
So at the time you were working with your brother
Hmm.
on the animation, other studios.
Mhm.
I imagine it's like
Mhm.
outsourced within Japan.
Yes.
Different sections. To
Yeah.
understand how this works better, perhaps, how is an anime?
Mm.
What goes? Where
So
do we even start?
so Jarrett and I actually did a 1 hour lecture about this topic maybe like a few months ago, and we couldn't get through all of it because there's so much that goes into it. So I'm gonna do the short version. So basically, you have production committees who commission or find popular mangas or IPs or light novels that they think would be good to adapt. They'll be maybe they'll grab 10 different topics. They'll make sure to grab some sure seller isekais and maybe some shonens that they think would do well, and then they'll maybe take a few risks. And basically, they're just gonna gamble and see maybe one of these will make us a bunch of money. So they end up funding maybe 8 to 10 shows at a time and sending them all out to different studios. And then when those studios pick them up, they have to decide, is this aligned with our vision as a studio? And then once they do that, then they can send a counter pitch to say, if we are the ones on this show, we will bring on this director, this character designer, maybe some voice actors. They have some idea of who they think would work well on this production.
Mm-hmm.
The production committee can decide which of these studio pitches that they get back is the most appealing, and then they will commission the studio for the series. And after that, it's very hands off. They usually just let them do it. And then they work with the mangaka. They work with all the talent, the animation staff to make the show. They'll maybe have a year to create a season. And these studios, they usually don't have enough in-house staff to create the productions fully themselves. Maybe there's a few, maybe Cloverworks or some bigger studios they do, but a lot of them are very small. So they hire out and subcontract to smaller studios. And that's how our studio got their start, was through these subcontract contracts, sometimes multiple layers deep. So they were very like low wage conditions, but we still wanted to do them just to get more experience and the credits. And I think that's how a lot of the smaller studios feel. They'll take any job just to get a little bit of a level up. But so the main contracts, they have all the character designers. They have the character designer, the directors who make the storyboards, and they're making those simultaneously. Once they make the storyboards, then they can start cutting it apart into sections, assigning it out to animators who create key animations. And then these key animations get corrected by 3 layers of supervision. You have the inshutsu, who's the assistant director or episode director, the sakuga kantoku, who is the animation or drawing director. They improve the quality of the animation. And then the sosakan, which is the chief animation director. And so these 3 people check every cut in the animation. Usually there's multiple sakuga kantoku, but there's usually only one inshutsu or sosakan per episode. And then once these corrections are collected, it gets sent back to the layout animator, who then creates their Genga frames. And I have examples of the Genga frames here.
Let's have a look.
So these would be what they would create.
So this is a very specific document, which is in an orange paper, always orange paper.
So not necessarily. The outside doubles as a folder, but also animation timesheet.
Mm-hmm.
So if you open the folder, the inside of the folder itself has animation timing on it. So it has the length of the cut, the voice dialogue that's happening in the cut, and then the timings for the exposures of the drawings for the compositor. And then the frames that they're making is these frames. We call it Nigen, which is the long term is Daini Genga. And this is what people usually see online or in art books. This is kind of the final frame of the animation before it's sent to color and in-betweening. There are another layer of checks after this before they get sent to final color. So all the directors will check all the cuts a second time. And then the in-betweeners, they will implement that feedback and then create the drawings that are missing from the animation.
So if I summarize this, At the very top, you've got the production committee,
Mm-hmm.
and this is basically the group that has the money and is willing to make an investment into a story.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll select a few stories which they want to try to turn from manga into anime version. Then a variety of studios will kind of pitch themselves to be the ones to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The one that gets selected will then make the character design in-house and the general direction, and then they will kind of find most likely partner studio like yours to do certain aspects of the work. And in between each of those aspects will get checked by those three rounds of 3 layers of checking that you just explained in studio, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we now look at it from the other side, you at the Tonari Animation, how do you get one of those jobs? Are there like specific job boards where these studios will post, we need a studio
That
to help
sounds
us with
nice.
this? Or is it all through networking?
It's
Or
like 90% network, 10% luck. I think one of the skills of Tonari Animation was having a really robust network of producers and contacts throughout the industry. So I think that company, when we were working there, the company actually doesn't exist anymore. It was started to be seen as, okay, we can go to them for outsourced animation, but we can't rely on them on a full production. So we need to just make sure we give them easier sections, um, just to make sure that we can finish our shows. And that selection process is kind of random. I think that there's Seisaku Shinko looking online. They're researching new studios. Maybe they're searching on Twitter or social media, trying to find groups of animators that they can bring in. And these Seisaku Shinko, they're usually new hires. So they're not digging too deeply. So they'll if they see, oh, this company says they do 2D animation outsource Sakuga, we're going to hire them. And they don't look that much farther into it. So when that happens, then the studio itself starts to get these jobs and they start to build a reputation. So if they're doing well, their reputation will improve and the producers will ask for them again, or maybe they'll blacklist them. But other studios are still looking for new people. So there's kind of like this web of people searching for freelance animators and freelance small studios that they can pay lower amounts to help finish the episodes because they don't have enough people in-house.
so you mentioned you get assigned a section. So if we talk about, let's say, one anime episode, that's like what, 15, 20 minutes ish. What's a section?
So usually a section, there's either 3 parts. A lot of times there's 2 parts, an A part and a B part. And these sections are usually split up. They might say, they'll look at the whole storyboard they'll look at the storyboards for the whole show or just for the episode. And they'll think this sequence feels very complex and we need the best animators to do this. But this section feels quite easy. So they might assign a part to, let's say that's the complex part. They'll assign that to in-house animators to ensure that they don't have problems on production. And then they'll assign B part to an outsourced studio. And it's kind of a gamble a lot of times if the quality will be as good as they would like. So they make sure to hire enough animation supervisors that can help correct the outsource animation so that it can mostly match the higher quality in-house animators. And then there's also really high quality freelance individual animators that kind of just dance through all the studios. They're getting traded around that can also help in these sections too.
With so much being outsourced to different studios, to different freelancers and so on, what's a communication system that's in place to be able to keep everyone on the same page, to keep track of everything that gets done and to make sure that the output is consistent so that the end viewer just sees an episode of One Piece and doesn't see an episode of One Piece made by 3 different studios at the same time?
Yeah, so I think that anime has had a chance to iron out this system because they've been doing it for so long. Like since the 70s even. It's basically been the same. And so they have really good systems in place, and the amount of checks that they have is specific. It's always 3 checks on each phase from the directors, and usually, if a section quality is too low, there's something we can do called Zinshu, which there's a new anime released, I think, by Mappa called Zinshu. Basically, this is a concept of the director will completely redo the animation from scratch if it's unusable. So then the directors are usually high quality animators. So if they get work that's unusable, they'll redo it, and then they'll ask the Sakuga Kantoku, which is the job that I do, to correct their really fast, rough drawings and try to make the animation work. And Zenshu cuts sometimes can become the best cuts in animation because the director themselves animated it, but they are quite challenging and they slow down productions too. So um, there's kind of this like balance between how high of a quality do we want this show to be versus are we going to make the deadline that we need to make. So they start making decisions on the producer level. Do we make sure that this has the highest quality? And they will redo things up to 2 weeks before to make sure things are at high quality if they need to. Versus can we spend time on this and give them to the best animators, just pay them more or whatever we need to do. And through these balances and having many, many production assistants, you can manage all the animators and find ways to deal with all the fires that get brought up. I think production assistance is more of a firefighting job than anything. It's how do we it's Hell's Kitchen. It's just nightmare after nightmare that they're trying to fix. And then maybe by the end, it doesn't look like a nightmare. And there's a lot of turnover for this position because it's high stress.
I can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take one episode of a decently popular anime. How many people on average would work on making that one episode?
So yeah, it's interesting. If you look at credit lists for animators on most episodes, generally it's less than 50 people on one episode of anime. And I would almost say it feels like less because the amount of Zenshu that's happening lately. So it feels more like at least for the animation side, it feels more like maybe 10 people. And then 3 to 6 supervisors. And then the production staff is usually quite large. And then, of course, voice acting, sound design, editors, compositors, they're all included, of course, too. CG support. So a lot of the credits get kind of a bit longer because of all the other support system. But the amount of key animators on an episode is quite small. I think usually less than 20.
And what is the timeline usually to produce one episode?
So usually they I think 4 to 6 months is a typical production timeline for one episode of anime. So you might be asking yourself, how does Naruto release anime every week, if that's possible? They stagger all productions by the deadlines. So if they're releasing an episode of One Piece every week, that means they have 4 months worth of productions happening simultaneously. So they have many, many people working at the studio and freelancers working on it. Directors, there's probably like 20 or 30 directors working on all different episodes at the exact same time. Otherwise, they couldn't make those release deadlines. So yeah, they still take about 4 to 6 months generally. For film, it's much longer, usually a year or 2, or maybe 4 years if they're really high budget. Yeah, so it's usually pretty fast.
That's crazy. So 4 to 6 months, and yes, for these weekly anime like One Piece, the amount of people that need to coordinate constantly for all the releases to be ready every single time, and then you wonder why sometimes that it makes the headlines that Oda-san is making a break and suddenly there will be no episodes for 3 weeks, and probably all the animators can take a small breath at that time
or catch up. Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to one of the stereotypes perhaps of the industry, and we've seen those perhaps documentaries, day in the life of an animator, that they kind of work endless hours into the night, few breaks, very little pay.
So there's a lot of stereotypes about this, and I think that some of them are true, but in a different perspective, I think that it doesn't seem so bad. So, low pay for animators usually is only for beginners. The main reason for this is because their speed is not as fast as it should be. So, for a typical like middle of the road animator, they might, if you were able to create 30 cuts a month, which is about a standard amount of cuts for an animator, you can live comfortably in Tokyo. So I think that if they get to that level, which maybe takes 1 to 2 years, then they don't have to worry about suffering for low pay. But a lot of people maybe join the anime industry without going to art school or simongako, or maybe they are just now learning to draw. And when they do this, it's going to take them way too long to create an individual cut of animation. So they end up struggling a lot and working a lot of hours just to make the quality of their cuts high enough to be usable. Um, and sometimes they'll work many, many hours and they still aren't usable, and the director Zinshus them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very frustrating beginning for most animators, if unless they come from an illustration background or an animation background. So I'd come from an animation background, but not really illustration. So I could adapt and learn the illustration side as I was working. Linnea, for example, started in the illustration side and manga side. So she already knew how to draw really complicated characters, and learning the animation stuff maybe took 6 months to a year. So I think that there's ways to avoid this kind of early and suffering, I guess, of animation work. So beyond that, the working hours. That is a very true thing. The working hours are very, very long. But the thing is that for most people that I know in the anime industry, it's self-inflicted. There are very few companies, I've never seen one, that forces animators to work long hours. Usually the animators are very passionate about their work and competitive too. So if the government decided we're going to make sure that animators don't work past 5 p.m., all of them will do it in secret at home,
I
just
see.
because it's like the best way to explain it is if someone tried to limit your training for the Olympics and they said, oh, you can only train these few hours, you will train in secret because you want to be the best, you want to become the fastest, you want to jump the highest. And the only way to do that is to keep doing it and work harder and longer and be like faster than everyone.
So it's not work; it's passion at this point. It's like
Exactly.
it's just like a
I-
life's work.
Exactly. If someone joins the industry and they don't have that kind of Olympic mindset of I want to be the best, I want to be great at this art form and this craft, they're going to have a very difficult time because they might want to be more interested in a work-life balance, have a really it seems like this is something that could easily be exploited by companies, but I think they're a lot more gracious about this than people think. So they're much more conscientious of this, and if they feel like somebody's overworking, they will pull back their amount of work and try to find other people that can help. They don't want people to get sick or overwork. Some people, animators I know, they will just always say, no, 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 I'm fine, I can do it, I can do it, and then they'll start physically getting sick and maybe even be hospitalized from overwork. Um, so it's like if you have someone who's wanting to be the fastest runner in the world and they keep getting sick doing it because they're working too hard and they're not taking enough breaks, someone's going to step in and say, okay, you need to like slow down and take care of yourself. But sometimes maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe there's some studios that just allow that to happen. But I've never seen it myself.
So within this industry and this complex production pipeline, where we've seen many people are involved, what exactly is your role and what are you responsible for?
So I'm typically responsible for animation supervision, which is called Sakuga Kantoku, or I'll do key animation. But also, I'm a character designer, which is my main passion. Um, Creating characters sort of lends back to the storytelling thing we were talking about earlier. That I think characters are the conduits for the story. So if they aren't appealing, if their designs aren't satisfying, then people have a less relatability to them. So I find it very satisfying to try to take the the source material and create characters that really feel truly authentic to the original creator's vision, and make them relatable and marketable. And so yeah, so that's my job mostly right now is doing character design, but also animation. In Japan, unlike other countries, if you want to be a character designer, you have to be a skilled animator because they want the character designers supervising the animation.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of people in the Western world that only do pre-production design. That's it. But if you want your characters to be the model sheets that you actually use on the show, you need to be an animator. So there's of course original designers who create the original concepts, but their work usually isn't in the final show. So my interest is to have my designs in the show.
And so one of the characters you've recently kind of worked on a lot is, for example, here we have Pomni.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that are familiar with the amazing Digital Circus, it has been released and has a chapter inside, I believe, that is done in a Japanese style anime for which you kind of did the character design. I didn't know this anime before kind of looking a little bit at your work. And then I saw how huge it is. Can you tell me a little bit about what this is and the characters you design and why it's such a unique thing to kind of turn these non-Japanese characters into anime characters?
Yeah, so this project was quite unique. I think that what Linnea and I were talking about this on the Shinkansen, that what becomes popular in Japan isn't necessarily shows that look like they're made in Japan. So there's a lot of shows in the West that might try to mimic anime style, and it's actually quite interesting to see how popular Digital Circus is in Japan. So I really wanted to make sure that these characters were very authentic, and basically this project. I totally lost your question.
Kind of how did you come to work on this?
Oh, okay.
How would you explain briefly Digital Circus and kind of your role in turning those characters into Japanese anime?
So Digital Circus is an independent production that was picked up by Glitch, created by a talented creator named Gooseworks. And originally it was just going to be like this animated show that would allow Gooseworks and their team to create this kind of like zany, kind of distorted world, and kind of dive into some deep topics. And so you have this very childlike aesthetic that's nostalgic of early 2000s computer graphics. And you have these characters that are like trapped in this world at the whim of this ringmaster who forces them into weird situations. So this show is, I love it. I was a fan of it before I got this job. But the way that I got this job in particular was the studio Glitch reached out to Tonari Animation and asked us if we were interested in collaborating with them on a 2D sequence. Of course, we were very interested in that. And as we found out that they wanted to create 2D anime, which is why they reached out to us, it was very interesting. So Jarrett created pitches for just sort of like we do in the anime industry of who would be the director, who would be the character designers, or any other important staff members for the production. And he created a list of, he got the director very early on, Yoshiharu Ashino. He is a wonderful director. He most famously, at least that I'm aware of, is the Madoka Magica first 3 episodes. He directed those, so he created the storyboards. Very legendary animator, director, and creator. And we got him early on, so he was confirmed. There was a list of maybe 5 designers. My name was included on the list, and he just asked them, "Can you give me some feedback on these portfolios? Which designer would you like to take on?" They had chosen like someone else, and they also said, "Oh, if the others aren't available, Bellamy, we would be great with. We would be happy with Bellamy's designs too." So they liked my portfolio. So basically, I just got lucky enough to be on this list, and was picked off of it. Now things kind of developed a lot more after creating these designs too, because I thought initially I was just going to create the designs. Maybe I wouldn't be involved in the animation production, and that would be handled by a different team. But Tonari Animation was going through some changes and some difficulties. And so we had to offload a lot of projects to independent groups, so of people within Tonari. And so we offloaded this project to my creative circle, Spoons, which is just like a group of people, me, Linnea Kataya, and Virginia Cortiana. And the three of us together, along with Jarrett, who worked as the Inshutsu, Ashino-san as the director, and then a small team of animators, we produced this independently. And so I ended up, originally as the character designer of this sequence, I ended up being producer. So I hired all the animation staff, I managed the production, and I worked really closely with Linnea. She was there side by side with me the whole project. We were trading cuts back and forth to improve the quality. We both created all the layout animations ourselves, and tried to just keep the scale small, because the quality of anime is better if the team is small, I think. And our main goal is just to make this as authentically anime as possible. So from everything from compositing to design to the way we animated it with traditional timesheets on paper.
So this is a timesheet here?
Yes. So this is a timesheet. There's a larger one here. These are usually what size they are, but these are the ones we used because we didn't have the large ones at the time. And that gets checked by the assistant director, retimed. We pass them back and forth physically. And so, yeah, I was able to adapt these designs. And to answer your second question, which was what it was like adapting 3D characters to 2D, I think that this was quite a challenge. Being able to take characters that are very obviously Western looking and make them feel Japanese is a challenge that many shows have tried to overcome in the past. And I think I was just barely in a lucky situation where I had gotten to the point where I felt comfortable with my skills as an illustrator to feel confident that I could replicate Japanese animation style based on my work in anime. And I don't think I would have been able to make these designs if I wasn't also an animator in anime. I spent many years trying to overtake my Western influences with Japanese anime. So I stopped watching Western cartoons. I only consume Japanese content. I'm constantly studying from. I was constantly studying from Japanese YouTubers on how to draw anime authentically.
What does that mean?
So that's a good question. What does that mean? So what it means is if I were to show you a drawing show a drawing to a Japanese otaku and ask them, do you like this design? Do you think it's cute? Does it look like
I like
Japanese
how you
anime?
changed it from me to a Japanese otaku because maybe, I am not the right subject.
Yeah, maybe you're not an otaku, but if they say, "Oh, yeah, that's cute. That looks like Japanese," then it's authentically anime. And I had a realization with this that I wasn't able to do this before this point because I was put on for a really big music video to create a character design. And I created the full sheets. I had it supervised by the director of Sword Art Online and Thomas Romain. And even with their feedback, the client said, "This isn't anime. We can't use this. We need someone else." So I got kicked off that project after the design was complete. And I got very depressed and I didn't understand. I felt like I was so close, like I was doing it. And there's just so many little tiny attention to details and ways of thinking that Japanese artists have when they approach their art that if you're not doing them, your art will just not look Japanese. So, for example, if even just the way you think, if you're not thinking cute thoughts while drawing a cute character, they probably won't be as cute. Or if you're not obsessing over really small details, or if you're not drawing your lines in the right kind of font, so yeah, characters can, even just the way you have your pen strokes can affect if it looks Japanese or not.
So let's take this character, which to me looks Japanese. What are those tiny little details that you put thought into when you designed the character that I may not be noticing at first?
So actually, these designs, Gooseworks is a big fan of a show called Azamango Daioh, and I heavily referenced that show for the clothing of this production. And I was looking at the way they drew shadows. This was supposed to look like a bit of a nostalgic anime, so I went against like normal character design logic, which is to follow the modern trends and go back in time and follow older trends. So I looked at early 2000s anime productions and saw that sometimes they would have shadows that were a bit more stylized. So for example, Pomni's skirt shadow has like an angle, and so does her shadows underneath her skirt and underneath the sleeves. That's not something that logically makes too much sense, but it looks a lot like the way they did it in Azamango Daioh. So there's one. And then the costume designs, I was referencing my vast collection of art books and school uniform collections, and basically invented very authentically Japanese school uniforms. I think that, well, maybe I could be wrong, but maybe if a Japanese person were to look at these school uniforms, they would think, oh, this character is wearing it properly and it's intentional. This character is wearing it improperly and that's intentional. So they feel Japanese in that way. And so the other thing is the way that I drew the lines. It's just kind of my instincts now of how I approach line art, just the type of arc I make when I'm drawing. I zoom in pretty close. I do the same arc, and this is just the kind of the way they draw lines here. The other things like the eyes, for Pomni, she was kind of, her eyes were somewhat inspired by My Hero Academia, and the characters that were more cute in that show, and just trying to find like balances and inspirations from different anime genres that kind of coalesced into a design that feels Japanese. And you could say the same for a lot of these other designs too.
I can hold up. Who is this? Who do
So this is Gangle, and she's also wearing a sailor uniform, but her ribbon's a bit different. There are different types of uniforms that you can find in Japan. So the varieties of the uniform were mostly just design decisions that fit the characters themselves. She's made of ribbons on the inside. She has no body, so it was a bit interesting to try to drape a clothing on her. And her mask just floats.
It says here on the top, Genga.
Yes.
What exactly is that?
So Genga, basically, these would be the lines that you would see for here. So these color sheets, they're not the final colors. They're just, of course, the shadow guides and highlight guides for what the final Genga should look like. So if they're drawing this Genga sheet, they should always have all the lines and details that are included on the character design.
So that means, for example, as a detail, if we take Pomni again here, the lines kind of breaking up in the middle of the skirt is part, like it should be maintained.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. You might think it's just like, oh, the lines because the skirt is here, but no, like the way it stops, and I mean, especially for example, it might be hard to see, it might be impossible to see on camera, but if we look at the frame where she's seated here, there's like a small cut in between. That's kind of also, well, this is because of the angle, but
yes,
it's okay.
And all the expressions are expressions that appeared in the animation themselves, so they were given really clear references for how the Genga should work. Although in the end, it ended up being Linnea and I to do all of them. So we were referencing, I created the references for us and for the people who helped with the in-betweens.
How big of a project was this for you guys?
Not too big, actually. A minute of animation isn't too difficult to get through time-wise. I think it maybe took us 2 to 4 months for the whole production while we were simultaneously working in the industry. So I think we could have produced it much faster, but of course we have our other work too.
So this becomes then a challenge when you have this project for Digital Circus,
Hmm.
and then you may have a project for another anime with a deadline because the episode needs to
Hmm.
be released on that day,
Hmm.
and then you might have presentations of a new plan to another company. How many projects at once do you usually kind of have to balance?
Well, in the early days, we had really short contracts for really small sections. So we might have half an episode, an individual artist might have 12 to 20 cuts, and that's not enough to even fill a month's worth of work. So generally, when we first started out, we were taking on maybe 7 to 10 projects simultaneously because we'd always be waiting for something and timelines didn't exactly line up. So we just have to take on way more work than we could normally do, just anticipating delays. And what happens with that is we'll end up having gaps of low work, gaps of really high work. And that's when we end up working 12, 15-hour days where we're simultaneously cramming on a TV production
Mm-hmm.
and an indie project. Those days, it's usually 8 a.m. to midnight. Like it's very, very long. That's not most days, but a lot of times we end up there.
What are some of your favorite project that you've gotten to work on?
Well, my favorite one is one that's airing soon, which will be out, of course, after this is before this is aired. So it's called Watanare, and it's an anime that uh, Linnea and I have both been working on for about 6 months. I think it's the most work we've ever put into a show, and it dwarfs any other work I've done. Even the amount of work I put in on Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim. There's just so much, so many episodes I've worked on now, so many drawings and characters. So yeah, it's been really amazing and comedic, and I felt like really satisfied with my work at the end, which is a new feeling for me. So maybe only in the last few years I've started feeling really happy with my work. Um,
Because there's always the Olympic mindset of you could always do better, you could always do it faster, you could always
mhm.
have the line sharper, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as there's people better than me, I'm not good enough. That it's how a lot of animators think.
Not easy.
Mm-mm.
No. You've been here now a couple of years and
Mhm.
kind of have suddenly been propelled into this very dynamic industry.
Mhm.
Um, is that a little bit what you expected coming here, or did you come with no
Mm.
expectations and just a dream?
I had no idea what to expect. I think that yeah, the dynamic nature of the industry is quite interesting to me. And this there's like multiple games being played in the anime industry simultaneously. There's the Olympics where all the animators are competing for the best jobs, and there's winners and losers, and people who quit, people who survive. It's very survival of the fittest. It's just very, very difficult. And then there's another game, the Game of Thrones, where all the producers are vying for different projects and and animators and creating teams and trying to compete to get the Olympic athletes on their team. So that maybe like another sports example would work, but I don't know much about sports. So, but anyways, so you have these people trying to get the best talent on their projects, all going to get drinks and talk to other studios, trying to get the best contracts, and then above that, it's well, maybe that one would be the Game of Thrones as the production committees, but anyways, there's like all these interplays of these really complicated systems, these like webs of studios that all work together,
And yet
and
all compete with each
that
other
all
in a way.
compete with each other simultaneously. Yeah, once the studio becomes powerful enough to get their own contracts, then they become competition. But before that, they're help. They help with the building out the productions. So there's forces out there that don't want small studios to get too big, because then they're going to compete with their studios their financial interests. So it's very difficult for a small studio to become a big studio. Um, some get very lucky, like Science Auto. They got famous by doing the anime sequence of Adventure Time, and maybe Digital Circus is sort of our way. Like maybe we can get a little bit further with that. But now they created Don Da Don and the Scott Pilgrim animation. So then they're very famous now,
Mhm.
and they have great talent. So yeah, it's just this interesting. It's like One Piece, just all these pirate ships battling each other, but sometimes working together. And you get to join different crews temporarily.
Is there a big turnover of smaller studios that kind of come and go?
Yes, yeah, I think like if you go on Twitter and just search new anime production and look at the studios that are producing those animations, you will have never heard of any of them. That's how many new studios keep popping up. And if they have their name on the production, it means they've been here for a while and they just now got their first big contract. So yeah, it's just a very interesting system. It's like almost like a confederate of random groups that kind of work together or don't, but compete, and they like each other. Some hate each other. It's very interesting to see like all of that kind of drama or camaraderie play out too.
What about you? What are your plans? What are the projects you'd love to work on? Is there like an anime you'd love to make an episode for, or?
So actually, the well, I can talk about my dreams in a second, but the when I first joined anime, I thought, oh, maybe it'd be great if I could work on One Piece or work on a new version of Sailor Moon or something like that. But the um, as time went on, I realized that the bigger the IP, the bigger the show isn't necessarily the jobs that I think are the most fun,
Hmm.
because it's like, do you want to work for a mega corporation or a small business? So it's like, do you want to be one of 1,000 people or one of a small crew? And I find that the smaller productions I end up getting more creative control over, or get to be more involved in pre-production and things like that. So I end up gravitating towards less known stuff or stuff that hasn't become famous yet, stuff that's just coming out. So in that way, I'm not interested as much in like pursuing IPs. However, if I got the opportunity to create like original Lord of the Rings characters or Star Wars characters or something, I think I would jump at the opportunity. But that would be for character design. I think at least for animation, I'm just gonna make stuff that seems interesting. If the characters are appealing and cute or cool, and they seem fun to draw, like that's the project I want to do. And if it challenges me too. So I'm more interested in, if I was a rock climber, reaching for a rock that I can't reach right now.
You
But
said you're not into sports, but you keep making sports analogies.
well, because anime is a sport, it should be like considered it, because it's very taxing on your body, and you need to be constantly drinking energy jelly just to stay awake to like get your cut. And um, yeah, well, I also used to rock climb, but that's why I thought of rock climbing.
In the forests of Arkansas.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, in the mountains, in the middle of nowhere. Um,
So many dreams, many projects, and you want to get to the
yes.
top of that boulder. And
Yeah, exactly. So like I got my first character designs really out into the world. So the dream in my mind is to be one of the first foreign character designers to uh, create the characters of a Japanese manga of a very successful series. Basically, I want to be able to create the main cast of a production, and be directly involved in that pre-production process. And I don't know if it's ever been done, a Western foreigner that has created the main cast of a Japanese anime. I think there are other Asian character designers who have, like people from Korea or China or wherever else. But to be able to gain the level of trust that I need to be able to, for the industry to trust me to handle something like this, instead of a Japanese character designer, that's probably impossible. But I'm gonna keep trying, so we'll see. Um,
and we'll be seeing more and more credits listed on your IMDb page.
Yes, of course.
With references to the many animes you've contributed to. And hopefully you'll get the main cast in the next few years sometimes.
And the other side goal too, of course, with character design is
the side quest.
Bridging Japan with Western storytellers who want to create authentically Japanese anime style productions. Um, I think that Japan is very closed off to a lot of foreign um, storytelling or IPs. It's not stuff that sells here super well. I think that also their production system can sometimes be a bit, um, I don't know if flaky is the right word, but basically they're happy to cut a project off even after it's finished in the West. And Japan doesn't like that. They would rather have their stuff put out regardless of how bad it is.
Interesting.
They will publish everything because the production committee books the TV slot before the production begins, and those are multiple years ahead. So they can't cancel shows in Japan. Not very rarely. I mean, they'll air storyboards before they cancel a show. So in the creators here really like that, especially directors, because no matter what, their story gets told, and nothing can stop them really. There's a lot of Japanese studios that have been burned by the West. So for creating projects, and then some executive decides this isn't for them, and they cancel it, and so all this work that they did for years goes away. So Japanese studios are very hesitant for that. So the studio that I'm now part of, Creative Freaks, which I'm a founding member of the new Sakuga department, we're looking for these like Western clients that have funding or pitch decks for stories that they're needing to tell, and they want to do it in a Japanese 2D aesthetic, but they're unable to get a studio. So bridging this gap is something that many people have tried in the past. They'll usually end up with hybrid shows or hiring staff from different countries and getting close. But I don't know if a true anime has been made yet with a non-Asian company. There's a lot of Korean and Chinese studios that are making really authentic feeling anime. Because of course they've been trained a lot longer in this style. But from a Western perspective, I don't know if it's happened yet.
So it might be your chance to get Olympic gold.
Yeah, maybe.
Bellamy
see.
Brooks, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and your insights into the anime industry. Do you feel like we covered it pretty well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we jumped over a few
we
older
skipped a
topics,
couple of
but
things.
I think it's okay.
But it was super insightful. Thank you for bringing all the documentation as well and to be able to show this. I'll have to take a look at the Digital Circus and especially looking out for your frames that you've done together with Linnea, whose episode was probably the one that was just published before this one, for those of you listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back soon. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.